Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to hear is nothing short of a financial earthquake shaking the very foundation of North American economics. This morning, in the cold halls of Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney walked up to a podium, looked directly into the cameras, and delivered a message that no Canadian leader has ever delivered before. Canada is breaking away. Canada is going its own way. And Canada is doing it with $25 billion and a fund that has the entire White House sitting in stunned silence. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this announcement has shocked Washington to its core, why Donald Trump's tariff strategy may have just collapsed in real time, and why the relationship between the United States and Canada will never look the same again. Let me set the scene for you. It is Monday morning, April 27th, 2026. The sun rises over Parliament Hill. Reporters are gathering. There are whispers everywhere. Something big is coming, something nobody expected. And then, at exactly 9:15 Eastern Time, Mark Carney steps in front of the cameras and announces the creation of the very first sovereign wealth fund in the history of Canada. He calls it the Canada Strong Fund. And the moment those words leave his mouth, every economist, every investor, every diplomat in North America understands that the game has just changed forever. According to reporting coming out of Bloomberg, The Globe and Mail, and CBC News this morning, the Canada Strong Fund will launch with an initial $25 billion. $25 billion. That is the opening shot. That is just the beginning. Carney told the nation, and I want you to hear this carefully, that today Canada faces new challenges from a world that is changing not gradually, but suddenly. He said this will be a people's fund. He said this will be your fund. And in a populist twist that nobody saw coming, he announced that ordinary Canadians, regular working families, will be able to invest their savings directly into this fund and benefit from its returns. In his own words, Carney said, "If you have a bit of extra money, we will make it easy for you to invest in the fund to help build Canada strong for all." Now, why does this matter? Why is this not just another government program with a flashy name? Let me explain. A sovereign wealth fund is something that nations like Norway, Saudi Arabia, China, and Singapore have used for decades to build generational wealth. Norway's fund, the famous oil fund, is now worth over 2.1 trillion United States dollars. It finances roughly 20% of Norway's entire state budget. It is the gold standard. And for 50 years, Canadians have been asking the same question over and over again. Why does Norway have this and we do not? Why have we let our oil, our gas, our minerals, our forests, our endless natural wealth slip through our fingers, while a tiny country of 5 million people on the edge of the Arctic Ocean built the largest investment fund in the world? For decades, Canadian leaders ducked that question. They let provinces fight over royalties. They let political fights kill every serious proposal. Alberta tried with its Heritage Savings Trust Fund back in 1976. That fund today is worth around 31 billion Canadian dollars. Norway, which started later, sits at over 2 trillion United States dollars. The difference is staggering. The difference is generational. And today, Mark Carney looked at that history and decided enough is enough. Today, Canada finally builds its own fund. Today, Canada finally takes control of its future. But here is where the story gets explosive, because this is not just an economic announcement. This is a geopolitical declaration of independence. And the target is sitting in Washington. Carney himself, just 1 week ago, told Canadians something that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. He said that Canada's close ties to America have become weaknesses that we must correct. He said the United States has fundamentally changed its approach to trade, raising its tariffs to levels last seen during the Great Depression. He said hope is not a plan and nostalgia is not a strategy. Those are the words of a man who has lost faith in his largest neighbor. Those are the words of a man who is preparing his country for a new economic reality. And the timing of this fund announcement is no accident. It is no coincidence. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne will deliver Canada's spring economic statement. That statement is expected to show a deficit much smaller than the $78 billion projection from November. The Canadian government wanted to set the stage. They wanted to dominate the news cycle, and they did it by dropping a sovereign wealth fund right in front of every camera in North America. The message is unmistakable. Canada is no longer waiting on Washington. Canada is building its own future. Let us talk about Donald Trump for a moment, because you cannot understand this story without understanding the man in the White House. For over a year now, Trump has been waging an economic war against Canada. He imposed massive tariffs on Canadian steel, on Canadian aluminum, on Canadian lumber, on Canadian autos. He threatened 100% tariffs on Canadian goods if Canada moved too close to China. He said, and these are his exact words from earlier this year, that Canada lives because of the United States. He even floated the idea, repeatedly, that Canada should become the 51st state of America. That comment alone enraged Canadians from coast to coast. It united the country in a way nothing had in decades. And now Mark Carney is delivering the answer. The Canada Strong Fund is the answer. The diversification away from American trade is the answer. The new partnerships with China, with the European Union, with the United Kingdom, with the Asia Pacific are the answer. And what you are watching, ladies and gentlemen, is the slow motion collapse of America's economic grip on its closest neighbor. For 150 years, Canadian prosperity has been tied to American prosperity. For 150 years, when America sneezed, Canada caught a cold. But Mark Carney is rewriting that story. Mark Carney is building a Canada that can stand on its own 2 feet, and Donald Trump may have just lost his most important leverage. Let us go deeper into how this fund will actually work. The Canada Strong Fund will operate as an arm's-length crown corporation. That means it will be professionally managed, separated from day-to-day political interference, designed to make decisions based on long-term returns rather than short-term political pressures. It will invest alongside the private sector in major nation-building projects, in energy, in trade infrastructure, in critical minerals, in transportation, in data centers, and in artificial intelligence. These are the industries of the future. These are the industries that will define the 21st century. And Canada is putting $25 billion on the table, with much more to come, to make sure it owns a piece of that future. But here is the populist masterstroke. Carney is opening this fund to ordinary Canadians. Think about that for a second. A regular nurse in Saskatchewan, a regular plumber in Nova Scotia, a regular teacher in British Columbia will be able to take a small portion of their savings and invest it directly into the same projects that pension funds and billionaires are investing in. This is not just a government program. This is a national project. This is a movement, and it is going to give millions of Canadians a personal stake in the success of their country. Now let us talk about the international dimension, because this is where the geopolitical earthquake gets really interesting. Carney has already traveled extensively to attract foreign capital from sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East, in Asia, in Europe. He has invited more than 100 of the world's largest investors to a summit in Toronto this coming September. The pitch is simple. Canada is stable. Canada is predictable. Canada respects the rule of law. And right now, with Donald Trump shaking the foundations of the global trading system, Canada looks like a safe harbor in a stormy world. This is exactly what terrifies Washington, because for years, foreign capital flowed automatically to America. American markets were the deepest, the safest, the most attractive in the world. But under Trump's second term, that confidence is cracking. Foreign investors are looking for alternatives. They are looking for stability. They are looking for predictability. And Mark Carney is positioning Canada as exactly that alternative. He is essentially telling global investors, do not trust Trump's America, trust our Canada instead. The European Union has been watching all of this very carefully. Brussels has been moving closer to Ottawa for months now. Trade negotiations have intensified. Joint defense projects are being discussed. The European Union sees in Canada a Western democracy that shares its values, that respects multilateralism, that does not throw tantrums on Truth Social every other day. And the Canada Strong Fund will almost certainly deepen those ties, because European pension funds and sovereign wealth funds will be lining up to participate in Canadian projects, especially in critical minerals and clean energy. China is another player in this drama. Earlier this year, Carney signed a trade agreement with Beijing that lowered Canadian tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in exchange for lower Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola, lobsters, crab, and peas. That deal infuriated Trump. He responded with his 100% tariff threat. But Carney did not back down. Carney kept pushing forward, and the Canada Strong Fund is now another step in that strategy of diversification. Whether you agree with closer ties to China or not, the geopolitical reality is that Canada is no longer putting all its eggs in the American basket. Mexico is also watching, because Mexico too is under enormous pressure from Trump's tariff policies. And if Canada can build a sovereign wealth fund, if Canada can diversify its economy, if Canada can stand up to Washington, then maybe Mexico can too. There are already whispers in Mexico City about a similar national investment vehicle. The dominoes may be starting to fall. The North American economic order, which has been dominated by Washington for over a century, may be shifting in ways we have not seen since the end of World War II. Now let us be honest, let us be balanced. There are critics of this fund inside Canada, and they are raising legitimate concerns. Some Canadians are worried that this is just another expensive government program that will hand contracts to political insiders. Some are worried that the fund will not be properly governed, that political interference will hollow it out the way political interference hollowed out the Alberta Heritage Fund. The deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Lantsman, has accused Carney of delivering more speeches than results. The Conservatives argue that Bill C-5, the legislation that allows the federal cabinet to fast-track major projects, is a power grab that bypasses environmental reviews and proper consultation. These are real concerns. They deserve a fair hearing. But here is the broader picture. Canada has tried doing nothing for 50 years. Canada has tried hoping that the relationship with America would always remain stable. Canada has tried letting the provinces fight over resources while the federal government stood back. And the result has been a country that, despite enormous natural wealth, has watched its productivity fall, watched its housing market explode, watched its young people give up on ever owning a home. The status quo has failed, and Mark Carney is offering a new path. So who has the upper hand right now? Who is winning this transcontinental chess match? Let me be direct with you. In the short term, Donald Trump still holds enormous leverage. The American economy is roughly 10 times larger than the Canadian economy. American tariffs have caused real damage to Canadian auto workers, to Canadian steel workers, to Canadian lumber communities. Canada cannot replace the American market overnight. It will take years, possibly decades, to fully diversify away from the United States. But in the medium and long term, Carney is playing a much smarter game. He is building institutions. He is building partnerships. He is building infrastructure. He is creating a sovereign wealth fund that, if managed properly, could grow to hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 2 decades. He is courting global investors. He is repositioning Canada as the stable, reliable Western democracy that Trump's America no longer claims to be. And every month that Trump stays in office throwing tariffs around, Carney's strategy looks smarter and smarter. The historical parallels are fascinating. Some commentators are comparing this moment to the late 1940s, when Britain finally accepted that it could no longer rely on its empire and had to remake itself as a modern industrial democracy. Others are comparing it to the 1970s, when France under de Gaulle declared its independence from American foreign policy and built its own nuclear deterrent. What Carney is doing is on that same scale. He is fundamentally reorienting his country's identity, its economy, and its place in the world. And he is doing it with the calm confidence of a former central banker who has seen it all and is not about to be intimidated by a man on Truth Social. What happens next? This is the question everybody in Washington and Ottawa is asking. There are several scenarios to consider. In the first scenario, the fund grows quickly, attracts massive foreign investment, builds out Canadian critical mineral production, builds new pipelines and trade corridors to the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and within a decade, Canada becomes a genuinely independent economic power. In the second scenario, political dysfunction takes over, the fund becomes a slush fund for political insiders, projects get delayed, returns disappoint, and the whole experiment becomes a cautionary tale. In the third scenario, Donald Trump strikes back hard with new tariffs and economic pressure, slowing Canadian growth and forcing Carney to retreat from his ambitious plans. But here's what I believe. I believe the third scenario, more tariff aggression from Trump, will actually accelerate the first scenario, because every time Trump punishes Canada, he proves Carney